It's strange how fast a lifetime can slip through your fingers, almost like trying to hold on to water. One moment you think you know someone better than you know yourself, and the next, you're standing in the wreckage, wondering if any of it was ever real. My name's Curtis. Not the heroic kind of name you read about in fairy tales, just Curtis. The guy who thought loving someone hard enough would fix everything that was broken inside them. The guy who stayed too long, who forgave too much, who kept hoping a storm would pass even while the house crumbled around him. The fool. And the woman I married? Her name is Lenora. If you think that sounds like the name of someone who could tear your soul into pieces without blinking, you wouldn't be wrong. It didn't happen overnight. The Lenora I met years ago was laughter and sunlight, a magnetic pull I couldn't resist. We used to drive for hours, just talking, stopping at gas stations for junk food like teenagers. She would tuck her hair behind her ear and smile at me like I was the only person who ever existed. That memory still haunts me. Because now I don't even recognize the woman who stood in front of me 2 months ago, a glass in her hand and venom in her eyes. It had been another long, exhausting day where every word felt like a landmine. I walked into the living room, thinking maybe, just maybe, if I made her favorite tea and asked about her day, it would crack through the ice wall she had built between us. But before I even spoke, she looked at me with pure contempt. I could see it in the way her shoulders tensed, in the twitch of her mouth. "You're so pathetic," she snapped, the words landing harder than any slap could have. I didn't respond. I don't know why. Maybe because deep down, I had already accepted it. Maybe because I thought silence would calm her down. It didn't. She grabbed the nearest glass, a cheap one we had bought at a flea market years ago when we were still happy, and hurled it across the room. It missed my face by inches, shattering against the wall with a sound that still echoes in my nightmares. And you know what I did? I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask her why. I just left. Walked out the front door without my shoes, my jacket, or my dignity. I left it all behind in that house full of broken dreams. When I think about it now, the saddest part isn't that she threw the glass. It's that a small, battered piece of me still waited, deep down, hoping she would chase after me. But Lenora didn't come after me. And I learned that night. Sometimes the silence is louder than any scream. The air outside felt cold against my skin, but I barely noticed. I kept walking, not knowing where I was going, only that I couldn't stay there one more second. I wandered through the quiet streets of our neighborhood, past the houses that once felt so familiar, so safe, now looking foreign and indifferent under the dim streetlights. It's strange how quickly the world can stop feeling like it belongs to you. I ended up sitting on a rusted bench near an empty playground, the same one where Lenora and I once talked about having kids, imagining the future like it was ours to shape. Funny how naive I had been. I stared at the swings, creaking gently in the wind, and for a while, I let myself believe that maybe I was the broken one. Maybe I was the reason she had turned into someone who could look at me like I was nothing. The night dragged on. I had no phone, no wallet, no plan. Just a growing realization that I had been living in a house built on hopes she had already abandoned long ago. At some point, exhaustion won over shame, and I walked to a cheap motel a few blocks away. The clerk barely glanced at me as he handed me a key to a room that smelled of stale cigarettes and disappointment. I collapsed on the lumpy bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering what she was doing right now. Was she regretting it? Was she crying? Was she even thinking about me at all? I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the glass shattering against the wall, the disgust in her face. I wondered if there had been signs earlier, moments where she had tested how much cruelty I would tolerate. Moments I missed because I wanted so badly to believe in her. Morning came too slowly. I walked back toward the house after sunrise, partly because I had nowhere else to go and partly because a stupid part of me hoped she would be waiting at the door, ready to apologize. She wasn't. In fact, when I pushed open the door, I found the house exactly as I had left it. Broken glass still glittering on the floor, cold tea sitting untouched on the table, the silence of a place abandoned emotionally long before it had been physically. And Lenora? She was gone. No note. No call. No explanation. Just her side of the closet ransacked, a few drawers left half open, as if she had packed in a hurry or simply didn't care what she left behind. For a while, I just stood there, breathing in the emptiness, feeling like the walls themselves were mocking me. I should have been angry. I should have been furious. But all I felt was small, shrunken down to the size of a regret. That's when I realized it wasn't just the marriage that had ended last night. It was the person I used to be, and I wasn't sure who was left in his place. Hours passed in that hollow house, and I couldn't move. It was like standing at the center of a collapsed building, too stunned to even call for help. I sat down on the floor, the broken glass crunching beneath me, and stared at the front door like I expected it to open any second, like she might come storming back in, laughing, calling it all a mistake. But the door stayed closed, and the only thing that stormed was the pounding inside my head. Eventually, I forced myself to get up. It felt mechanical, like my body was moving while my mind stayed frozen somewhere back on that bench near the playground. I started picking up the shards of glass, cutting my fingers more than once, but I barely flinched. Each sting felt deserved somehow, like penance for letting it all fall apart without fighting harder. While I cleaned, I noticed something tucked behind the couch, a crumpled piece of notebook paper, half hidden by the shadows. I pulled it out with shaking hands. It wasn't addressed to me. In fact, it wasn't really a note at all. It was a list. A list of things Lenora wanted to do. At first, it seemed innocent. Visit New York. Take a cooking class. Go skydiving. But halfway down, the tone shifted. And when I saw it, my chest tightened so hard I thought I might pass out. Find someone who actually understands me. Stop pretending. Stop wasting my life with Curtis. There it was. My name, scribbled between her dreams and her resentments. As if I was an item she could check off and leave behind. I sat back on my heels, the paper trembling in my hands. All the late nights I stayed up worrying about her. All the apologies I made for things I didn't even do. All the love I kept offering like a fool, begging someone to notice. None of it mattered. To her, I had been another obstacle. A mistake to be corrected. I don't know how long I sat there reading those same sentences over and over. Long enough for the sun to move across the living room floor. Long enough for the numbness to settle deeper than I thought possible. Eventually, I folded the paper and slid it into my pocket. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because I needed to remember. Remember what love isn't. Remember what staying silent cost me. I stood in the ruins of the life I had built with her, and for the first time, I didn't feel small anymore. I felt something colder, something harder. And without really knowing why, I made a decision right then and there. I wasn't going to wait for her to come back. I was going to make sure there was nothing left for her to return to. I didn't pack her things like a man grieving. I packed them like a man erasing. There's a difference, and I felt it in every mechanical movement, in every emotionless tug of a drawer, in every heartless sweep of my arm, clearing her things into garbage bags. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was survival. I started with the bedroom. The closet, half empty from her rushed departure, still smelled faintly of her perfume. That sickly sweet vanilla scent that used to drive me crazy in the best way. Now, it made my stomach turn. I ripped everything off the hangers and stuffed it into black trash bags. The silk dresses she used to wear to dinner parties, she made me feel invisible at. The boots she bought without asking, dropping hundreds of dollars we didn't have. The ratty college hoodie she always said she was going to throw away, but never did. Bag after bag, I filled them all until the closet was nothing but an empty shell. A tomb where all the promises we made were laid to rest. Next was the bathroom. Her lotions, her hair products, the drawer full of cosmetics she accused me once of moving just to annoy her. All gone in minutes. The living room was trickier. There were memories there I hadn't armored myself against yet. The couch where we spent countless nights binging stupid TV shows, pretending to be happy. The bookshelf she insisted we build together even though we both knew we sucked at anything involving tools. The coffee mug she bought me, a cheesy world's best husband joke she thought was hilarious. I threw it all away. Every reminder of her, every relic of the life I thought we were building, every piece of evidence that Curtis, the old Curtis, had ever existed. When I finished, I stood in the middle of the now bare house and realized something brutal. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a crime scene. A place where love was murdered slowly, over years. Not with a weapon, but with neglect, cruelty, and indifference. I knew I couldn't stay. Not another night. Not another minute. So I did the only thing that made sense. I grabbed what little I actually owned, a duffel bag with some clothes, a photo of my late father, a notebook full of old dreams, and I left. Not slamming the door behind me. Not looking back. Just walking away, silent, carrying nothing but scars she would never bother to see. I didn't have a destination yet. I barely had a plan, but I had something stronger than either of those. I had freedom, and for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel guilty for wanting it. I didn't have a plan, but somehow my feet carried me to a small diner on the edge of town, the kind of place you only find if you're lost or desperate. I must have looked like both. The waitress, a woman with tired eyes and kind hands, didn't ask questions when I slid into a booth at the back, ordered coffee, and stared blankly at the peeling vinyl seat across from me. I don't remember how long I sat there, nursing the lukewarm coffee, watching other people's lives move past me like a movie I was no longer part of. Couples laughing, families bickering good-naturedly, kids tapping their sticky fingers on the windows. Normal. Alive. I wondered if Lenora felt free now. If she was somewhere laughing with someone who didn't bore her, who didn't waste her life. Maybe she was already telling the story of how she escaped her dull, pathetic husband, spinning herself into the brave heroine and me into the villain she had to outgrow. Maybe she was relieved she didn't have to fake it anymore. I was about to leave when someone slid into the booth across from me without asking. A man, maybe mid-50s, worn around the edges in a way that life itself seems to do to people who've seen too much. He wore a battered leather jacket, and his face was shadowed under a baseball cap. His eyes, though sharp as glass. "You Curtis?" he asked, his voice low. My heart dropped straight into my stomach. "Yeah, why?" I managed to choke out, instantly on edge. The man leaned in slightly, glancing around the diner like he was afraid someone might be listening. "You don't know me, but I know a little about you," he said. "And I know about Lenora." I stared at him, the words not computing. Was this some sick joke? Had Lenora sent someone to rub salt in the wound? He reached into his jacket, and for one terrifying second, I thought this was it, that this was how my story ended, gunned down in a crappy diner over sins I hadn't even committed. But instead, he pulled out an envelope. A thick one. Crumpled, like it had been carried around for weeks, maybe months. He slid it across the table toward me without a word. "You should read it," he said. "You deserve to know the truth." I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The envelope just sat there between us, humming with a weight I could feel even without touching it. "What is this?" I whispered. The man just gave me a sad smile, the kind you give someone when you know they're about to be shattered, and said, "It's everything she never told you." Then he stood, left a few crumpled dollars on the table for his coffee, and disappeared out the door before I could even ask his name. I sat there staring at that envelope like it was a bomb. Because deep down, I already knew. Whatever was inside, it wasn't going to make me feel better. It wasn't going to bring closure. It wasn't going to heal me. It was going to burn whatever little hope I still had left. And I wasn't sure if I was ready to see the ashes yet. The envelope sat in front of me like a living thing, pulsing with the kind of dread you can't explain to anyone unless they've felt it themselves. It was heavy, not from the paper inside, but from the truth it promised to reveal. I hesitated, staring at it, my fingers twitching on the tabletop. Part of me didn't want to know. Ignorance is a comfortable place to hide when you're broken. But another part, the part that had been beaten down, humiliated, abandoned, needed answers more than it needed comfort. So I tore it open. Inside, there were photographs first. Grainy, amateur shots clearly taken without the subject's knowledge. And at the center of nearly every frame was Lenora, laughing, leaning into another man's chest, holding his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. They weren't just friends. You don't look at friends like that. You don't touch friends like that. My throat closed up as I flipped through photo after photo, feeling my chest tighten with every image. Different locations. Different days. Not just a fling. This was a second life she had been living right under my nose. Tucked among the photos was a letter, handwritten. No signature. "Curtis," it began. "I don't know if you'll ever read this, but if you do, it's because you deserve the truth. Lenora has been seeing Marcus for almost a year now. She met him at one of the girls' nights out she claimed were just to blow off steam. They planned to leave you long before she ever threw that glass. She just didn't know how to make you leave first." I stopped reading, nausea climbing up my throat. Marcus. Of course it had a name. Of course it was someone real, someone she could build a new story with. The letter went on. She didn't want the divorce to look like her fault. She needed you to walk away. She needed you to be the villain. That way, she could pretend she was the victim of an unhappy marriage she tried so hard to save. I let the letter drop onto the table, my hands trembling so badly the paper fluttered to the floor. All this time, I thought it was about fights, about drifting apart, about stress. But it wasn't. It was a script. A carefully orchestrated demolition, planned by the woman I loved, performed behind a mask she wore so convincingly I never even thought to look underneath. I pressed my fist against my forehead, trying to steady myself, trying to push down the wave of shame that threatened to swallow me. I wasn't just abandoned. I was played. And somehow, knowing that hurt worse than anything else she had done. I looked around the diner, but no one was paying attention to me, a pathetic man with a pile of photos and a broken heart. Good. I didn't want witnesses to this particular kind of collapse. For a long time, I just sat there, letting the numbness seep deeper into my bones. And then, slowly, something shifted inside me. A new kind of silence, not the defeated kind, not the cowardly kind, but a silence edged with clarity. For the first time since Lenora threw that glass, I realized something. I wasn't weak for walking away. I was free because I finally had the courage to. She hadn't defeated me. She had freed me. And that knowledge, raw and brutal as it was, started to feel a lot like power. Real power. The kind I had forgotten I ever had. The days after the diner felt like stepping into a world that had the same colors but none of the same meaning. I found a cheap room to rent on the edge of town, a tiny one-bedroom place with thin walls and a leaking faucet. It was nothing like the house Lenora and I had built together, but at least it was mine. No memories clung to the cracked paint or the crooked light fixtures. No echoes of laughter turned bitter haunted the rooms. I started working odd jobs, anything I could find. Loading trucks at a warehouse. Painting fences for old ladies who tipped in cookies and crumpled bills. It wasn't glamorous, but for the first time in years, I didn't have to pretend to be someone I wasn't. There was no one to impress, no one to disappoint. At night, I would sit on the floor of my new apartment, sipping cheap coffee and sketching plans for a future I hadn't dared dream about before. Nothing grand, just a life without lies, without walking on eggshells, without waiting for the next blow to fall. I thought I was done with Lenora. I thought I had finally exorcised her from my bones. But the past has sharp teeth, and it never lets go cleanly. It happened one gray afternoon, about a month after I found the envelope. I was fixing the broken door to my apartment when I heard a knock behind me. I wiped the sweat from my forehead, turned around, and there she was. Lenora. Standing there like a ghost who hadn't gotten the memo that she was dead to me. She looked different. Tired. Thinner. Her hair was messier than I ever remembered seeing it, her makeup smudged like she had rushed out of somewhere in a panic. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she gave me a weak little smile, the kind she used to flash when she wanted to dodge responsibility. Curtis, she said softly, like we were old friends meeting by chance. I didn't move. Didn't open the door wider. Didn't invite her in. She shifted awkwardly on her feet, clutching a worn-out purse to her chest. I just wanted to talk, she said. To explain. Explain? Explain how she had rehearsed my downfall like it was a play? Explain how she had smiled into another man's arms while I sat home wondering how to fix us? I almost laughed. Instead, I leaned casually against the doorframe, crossing my arms. You don't owe me anything, Lenora, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. And I don't owe you my time. That seemed to hit her harder than anything she expected. Her face crumbled for a second, and for the first time, I wondered if maybe things hadn't worked out the way she planned. Maybe Marcus hadn't been the savior she thought he was. Maybe she had realized that building a life on betrayal leaves you standing on nothing but ruins. I made mistakes, she whispered. Mistakes. What a convenient word. Small. Manageable. As if she had just misplaced her car keys, not demolished a marriage. I stayed silent, letting her squirm in the weight of her own choices. Finally, she looked up at me with wide, desperate eyes. Can we talk somewhere? She pleaded. Please. There was a time I would have dropped everything to hear her out, to make sense of the mess, to try and stitch us back together with trembling hands. But that man didn't live here anymore. No, I said simply, and closed the door in her face. I leaned against it for a long moment after, listening to the sound of her footsteps retreating down the hallway. Soft. Hesitant. Gone. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I just stood there, breathing in the heavy, healing silence. Because this time, the silence was mine, and I wasn't giving it up for anyone. After Lenora left that day, a strange quiet filled my little apartment. But this time, it wasn't the kind of silence that gnawed at you, picking at old wounds. It was cleaner, lighter, almost peaceful. I spent the evening sitting by the window, watching the city breathe around me, the hum of distant traffic, the warm glow of apartment windows blinking to life one by one. For the first time in years, I realized I wasn't dreading tomorrow. I wasn't wondering how to fix something broken. I wasn't strategizing what to say to keep the peace. I wasn't waiting for the next betrayal. I was just living. A few weeks later, I picked up more hours at the warehouse. The work was hard, but honest. And there was something strangely satisfying about ending the day exhausted from lifting real weight, not emotional wreckage. One afternoon, while grabbing lunch from a food truck near the site, I met someone. Her name was Elise. Not glamorous, not dramatic, just real. She had paint on her jeans from her job helping refurbish old houses, and she laughed with the kind of easy joy I hadn't heard in years. We talked about stupid things at first, sandwiches, bad coffee, favorite childhood cartoons. And for once, I didn't feel the need to impress or perform. I was just Curtis, the guy who survived. We started meeting for coffee after work, sitting on park benches until the sun dipped below the horizon. No games. No masks. Just two people figuring it out, one honest conversation at a time. I didn't rush it. I didn't cling to her like a drowning man. I let it happen naturally, slowly, in a way that felt nothing like what I had with Lenora, and everything like what I had always deserved but never believed I could have. And as the months passed, my heart, battered and bruised as it was, started to beat differently. Not because someone else saved me, but because I finally understood something I never had before. Sometimes, the most painful endings are really just disguised beginnings. Sometimes, the people who break you are the ones who free you to rebuild better. I didn't need Lenora's apology. I didn't need revenge. I didn't even need answers anymore. I had something better. I had my life back. And this time, I was living it for me.